Everybody, this is episode 2 of season 2 of Bible Time with Larry and Pam.
Hello.
As you probably noticed from the last episode that we are in yet another different studio. This is our studio, our home studio. We're finally here. We didn't have anything on the wall last week.
Still in the works.
Still working. We'll be adding to it as we go, but you can see behind me, we got a nice little picture.
Hey, it's a start.
That's right. Everybody's going to start somewhere. So we're going to be, here. This is our studio.
Here we are.
It's a cold day today.
It's very cold.
As you notice, we're wearing jackets and sweater because our studio is not heated. And it's cold outside.
Or insulated for that matter.
Right. It's the current temperature right now, I think, is around 30 degrees with a wind chill factor. It said feel like temperature. They're my southern thing.
Feel like. It feels like,
feel like temperature.
Hey, y'all. I'm country now.
Feel like temperature was 21. So, she's got it right there. 32 degrees.
With a low of 18.
Yes. So we actually had here where we are, we're just outside Baton Rouge. Pretty much a bunch of stuff shut down today. Schools were the great ice storm of 2024.
I didn't really check. I wonder if other stores closed down, but definitely government buildings and schools, even private schools for the most part.
So there's some ice. It's not like it. They were predicting like power outages
which we had.
Yeah, for what, about an hour?
Yeah, but early this morning, we don't know. We're from Florida, so this could really be a thing, y'all. Like slip sliding away in your cars.
Yeah, we had a little bit of water on our driveway from where the ice started to melt, and then it refroze, and so it's kind of neat. It's like, this is what they experience up north. You can slide on the ice, go into your car. For about 4 feet.
Well, we always wonder, people who... the funny videos walking around.
Oh, yeah.
And they're slip sliding away, and we're like, okay, don't they know it's slippery?
Yeah, don't you know there's ice?
I guess we just don't know. Like maybe sometimes it's slippery and sometimes it's not, and they keep trying to gauge.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're on a learning curve here.
Yeah, so folks. That's why we have our sweater. This is my wool sweater.
Brought out the woolens.
It's actually from England. It's what the police wear in England. I bought it off of eBay several years ago.
Which is kind of a funny story.
Yeah. They played a prank on me when I got it. I was waiting for it. I was actually going to go. I bought it to go on a fishing trip up in Michigan, and I needed something to keep me warm. And I've been waiting for this sweater. It was getting close to time where I had to leave, and it hadn't come yet. It finally arrived, and I opened the box.
While you were at work? No.
It came while I was at work.
We opened the box while you were at work.
And they switched out this a sweater for a little girl, if I remember correctly.
It was my sweater, actually. Oh, yeah. But thank you for calling me a little girl.
Anyway, so I was devastated that they sent me the wrong sweater. And anyways,
it was really hilarious. The kids got a real crack out of it because you were really upset. So because there wasn't much time. I think you were leaving the next day or something. Yeah,
I didn't have any time.
It wasn't really time to get another wool sweater in Florida.
Yeah,
because you don't just run down.
Yeah, Florida is not known for selling.
Don't run down to the Kohl's or the J.C. Penney's and get a wool sweater.
Anyway, alrighty. Well, let's continue from last week. We were talking about sinful nature. Now, there were a few verses that I said we're going to go back to, and hopefully I'll remember. I think we have them written down to help me remember, but if I forget, I'm sorry. So, I can't help it. I have a sinful nature. So no, I'm just kidding. That's
you went there.
Yeah, I did. Anyway.
You did that.
But first, I wanted to let's start with. You don't have this verse on here. I kind of wrote it down my chicken scratch. It's Jeremiah 17:9. This is a famous verse. I probably won't quote it verbatim, but it says, "The heart is deceitful and desperately wicked. Who can know it?" Something like that. Okay. Pretty much everybody uses this verse as a proof text to prove sinful nature. Notice what is not mentioned here.
Well, is that the one also that can be used for like the total depravity?
Right, yeah. Same idea, same verse. Yeah.
Do you want me to look it up?
Oh, sure. Go ahead since you got it right there.
Okay. I also just realized I left other verses in there that I'm supposed to read.
Oh dear. 17:19. 17:9, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Don't you have a Bible app?
I do. It's just easier this way, believe it or not.
Oh, really?
Yep. Jeremiah 17:19.
17:9.
17:9.
You're doing what I did.
You said 19. Easy for you to say. Now I have to do the little lookup. I'm trying to keep it off the camera, but I guess it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
If we see my phone.
Well, by the time you get...
my phone app. What? If loaded? Oh, there it is.
There it is.
Jeremiah 17:9. The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? Isn't that what you said?
Yeah, or something like that.
Why did I read all that?
Well, because I didn't have it exactly quoted.
Okay.
But, however, what is not missing there? Or what is missing?
What is missing?
Yeah.
The heart is deceitful. I don't know. Where are you going?
Well, are you saying that the heart is the nature of a person?
I didn't say that. Did you say that?
I didn't say that.
Well, what did you say?
I said the heart is deceitful. Now you got to define what is the heart.
What is the heart?
I'm saying the Bible teaches the heart. This is for another lesson. We won't go into it too much. But my opinion is when the Bible talks about the heart, it's two things.
All right.
It's either the physical organ that's in your chest, your heart, or it's more of your soul or emotions. And we know our emotions are deceptive. How many times, like if somebody's going to get you to buy something you don't want to do, what do? They appeal to your...
Well, your emotions, not just your emotions. I mean, your taste buds, your lusts, your...
Well, yeah, but generally it's an emotional appeal of some sort to get you...
I guess that's
yeah.
true.
So we could say the emotions are deceitful and desperately wicked. Who can know them? I mean, we do. What is the one thing we say? Follow your passions. Follow your heart. Well, that's... Yeah, you go on those emotions that... But anyway, so just to equate heart with the nature of a person... I think it does a disservice to this verse because it doesn't really define
that's what
it.
people are doing in your
Right,
experience. Yeah. People are saying this verse takes us to the fact that we have a sinful nature. It's pointing and saying we have a sinful nature.
Yeah, because the heart is deceitful and desperately wicked. Who can know it?
Got you. But I mean, you've heard people say, well, the nature of it or the heart of it, they kind of equate that in general.
We do, but is that what this verse is saying?
I think in life and not just in spiritual terms. I would say no, that is not what this verse is saying, but it could be twisted to say that.
And it definitely is. However, now let's skip ahead to Romans chapter 5. Actually, no, let's go to... Before we do that, we're going to go to Romans 7, 15 through 20. I don't know if we have that written down.
We do.
Okay, or is
That's
it? What?
I left in the house.
Oh, okay.
I'll be right back.
Well, no, that's fine. You don't need it. So basically what it says is Paul saying, the things that I don't want to do, I do, and that which I want to do, I don't do. Mm-hmm. Therefore, it's no longer I that do them, it's sin that dwelleth in me. Okay, well, if you read that verse, he says, it's no longer I, but sin that dwelleth in me. That's not his nature. He's not saying, if his nature is sinful, then why would he want to do good? Wouldn't that be against his nature?
And if he were totally depraved, why would he want to do good?
Right. To say you're totally depraved, or as the Calvinists define it, is totally unable or incapable of doing good. If that is the case, then doing good is something completely foreign. You are doing good by doing what your nature is. And if your nature is sinful, that is what you are and that's what you're doing. How can you be judged for doing something you already are?
I don't know if I followed all that. Can you reword that?
I'll reword that. If you're saying your nature, you are a sinner by nature. You're born that way. There's nothing you can do about it. It's who you are. And if you're acting out who you are, then what you're doing is going to be sinful.
And that's what some doctrine is teaching.
Right, but to do the problem with that is they expect and they get disgusted when sinners act like sinners. But they're doing according to their nature. To act outside their nature would be weird. Now let's go to Romans chapter 5, verse 12. It says, wherefore, as by one man sin entered into the world, and death by sin, and so death passed upon all men, for that all have sinned. That's the verse right there. That's where we get our sinful nature Because Adam's sin, he passed down that sinful nature to his descendants, right? Isn't that what it says?
Therefore, we all sin. I mean, come on, hun. Fall in line. Sinful nature just sounds so right for man.
Does. Yeah, well, it does. It's easy. It's an excuse, right? But what does it say?
It kind of is.
Wherefore, as by one man's sin, where it says, as by one man's sin, you got,
I wondered something. If you would have a hard time. I wrote it angled so that I could fit more in there. See how it's angled
anyway, sin entered into the world and death by sin. Okay, let's go. So what we're going to do here, we're going to focus on, sorry about that, on going back to the Garden of Eden in Genesis chapter 3 and what happened.
What happened?
We don't need to read all this.
Genesis 3. Oh, she was tempted.
Right. Eve was tempted, but before that, God gave Adam the law. And what was the law?
Not to eat.
He said, of every fruit of the tree you shall eat, except this one fruit, do not eat. In the day that you eat thereof, you shall surely die.
So she was tempted. She gave into temptation.
They ate.
She ate.
What happened?
Then he ate.
So here's the problem. This is where people don't necessarily read completely or don't understand what's going on.
Okay.
Because God says, in the day that you eat thereof, you shall surely die. Did they die that day?
They did not.
No. And so people say, well, God's not a liar, right? We know that. So if they didn't die that day, then what happened?
Well, the popular belief is that they died spiritually.
Bingo. They died spiritually.
And then they got a sinful nature.
That's right.
Bing,
Bingo.
Bing, bing,
you got
bing,
it. You're
bing.
catching on.
What do I win? Do I get a new car?
But what happened? Let's look at what happened. We know they sinned. They stood before God. They gave their defense. Eve said, it was the serpent that beguiled me, that tempted me, and that's why I ate of the fruit. Adam said to God, it's that woman you gave me. So he blamed Eve and he blamed God for his fallen nature, right?
We've been doing that ever since.
Right.
Pointing the finger.
But this is what happened. They stood there. They were guilty. They're ready for the judgment to fall. But what happened? What did God do?
He gave them an out.
He gave them He gave them a coat of skins, right? Where do you suppose he got those skins from?
Something had to die.
Something died that day, right? In their place. That is the essence of the gospel. You are guilty because you chose to sin. Either you were beguiled by something, like Eve was, or you willfully did it, as Adam did. In either case, the result is you're still guilty because that's what you chose to do. And that's why you are guilty. And that's why you're a sinner.
Wait. Where's this word choice?
Well, obviously, Adam and Eve chose to do something. They weren't forced. Now, if you're a strict Calvinist, most Calvinists will say that Adam was the only man that truly had a free will. After that, nobody else did. But it just gets into a bunch of nonsense. This is the gospel right here. What is the essence of the gospel? Is that Jesus died on the behalf of sinners, right? To redeem them. Mm-hmm. Adam and Eve died. The lamb died in their place. And God covered them with the skin. So picture this. What is like baptism? What is the picture of baptism?
The death, burial, and resurrection.
Right. And you're immersed into the water. You're completely covered. And then you're raised again as a new person, right? Adam and Eve were immersed into the skins of the animal that died on their behalf. So the law was, in the day you eat, you shall surely die. That was the punishment of violating the law. God's law always has to be carried out. The law and the punishment have to be carried out. If not, then God's not a just judge. So he could have killed them, executed them right then. But instead, he chose to redeem them. He chose another way where something innocent that didn't commit a sin would die on their behalf. Therefore, they were placed into that. They were covered by the skins. The blood of that animal fulfilled the requirement of the law. And they were, in a sense, free to go because the penalty was paid by another. Now you say, well, okay, then why did they die? Well, it tells you, if you read Genesis chapter 3, I think it's around verse 28 or 23, somewhere around there at the end of the chapter, God says, now man has become one of us and knows good and evil. Therefore, lest he put forth his hand and eat of the tree of life and live forever, he's got to go. That's my version, but you can read it. It says it right there. The reason why they died is because they were denied access to the tree of life. We have this idea that Adam and Eve, before they sinned, they couldn't die. That somehow their body was special and it was beyond ours, and they were beyond death. Adam and Eve, they were perfect, but they had no moral character.
Okay.
Moral character is developed through trials. It's like experience. How do you get experience?
Mm-hmm. You have to have experience.
Yeah, you have to have experience. God had to give them the ability to choose good or choose evil so that they could, on their own volition, choose to follow God or choose not to. Mm-hmm. That's the way it had to be. God had to say, I can't make this decision for you. Otherwise, we're not independent beings. We're not free. Now, some people in the Calvinist camp will say, absolutely, we're not. If I have the ability to choose, then that puts me in the place of God, because is not God sovereign? Mm. Well, my ability to choose has not. If my ability to choose can take away from God's sovereignty, then he's not really sovereign, is he?
That's a good point.
So this is what happened in the garden. Adam and Eve sinned. God allowed something else to die in their place. But part of the consequence was, he says, okay, now that you have become gods, because remember the temptation the serpent said to Eve, you shall be as gods, knowing good and evil.
Yeah.
Was that true?
So that was the temptation. Well, yeah.
Yeah, because God said that. He says, man has become one of us.
Yeah.
He knows good and evil. Mm-hmm. So now he denied them the tree of life. Up until that point, let's say Adam fell into a pit and couldn't get out of it, you know what would happen to him? This is before he ate of the fruit. You know what would have happened to him?
He would have died.
He would have died. He would have starved to death or died of dehydration.
Looky there.
He would have died because his body was made up like us, flesh and blood, and meat. Needs to eat, needs to drink, sleep, all those same needs. That nothing changed. It just, when they were kicked out of the garden, God put up a barrier, a guard around the tree of life. He didn't want man to eat of it. He says, you can't live in my house and you're not going to eat of my fruit. You're going to have to grow your own now. Mm-hmm. Because man chose his own way. That is what happened in the garden. It's pretty simple. Man, now death. So when God says you shall surely die, what do you think that death was?
Was it spiritual?
Yeah. And what is that? People say spiritual death. Then they try to equate it. Well, that means separation from God. Oh, okay. Well, what does that mean? Do you think Adam and Eve were separated from God after they sinned?
No.
No, because what did they do? They still had some type of communion with God. Even their children, what did Cain and Abel do?
All kinds of stuff. But what are you getting at?
Well, I mean,
where are you going? Well, where are you going with that?
What caused Cain to be jealous of Abel?
Oh, his sacrifice.
Yeah, where do you think
God?
Yeah, where do you think they learned that?
Oh, probably from their parents.
Yeah, they were still sacrificing because obviously that's where Cain and Abel learned it from. They didn't just all of a sudden say, "Oh, you know what would be a good idea? Let's make a sacrifice to God." And Cain says, "Oh, I'm a farmer. I'll sacrifice my crops. I'll put them on an altar and burn them." And Abel says, "Well, I raise sheep and I'll sacrifice my sheep, one of them or however many." That didn't happen. They saw their parents doing a sacrifice and on some kind of regular basis. They understood what that meant.
Yeah.
And Abel understood it was the blood that was required. And that's why he sacrificed the lamb and Cain didn't. Mm-hmm. Cain did out of his own fruit, out of his own labor. Mm-hmm. So that's why. So this verse in Romans, it says, by one man's sin and death entered into the world. The death is the physical death. That's it. It's this. There's nothing spiritual about it. It's we die because sin. Paul in another Romans 3:23 says, "For the wages of sin is death, but the gift of God is eternal life through Jesus Christ our Lord." Mm-hmm. Wages. What does that mean?
What you earn.
Yeah, you earn it. How do you earn it? Well, you work for it. So if you're working towards sin, your wage is going to be death, and that death is physical death. Now we say, well, if you're a Christian, Jesus says we'll live forever. Yeah. So in Romans chapter 6, 3 times he says what? Where you wrote it down here on the board here, Romans 6, right there.
Talking about the flesh?
Yeah. What does it say?
The flesh dies.
The flesh dies. So going back to Romans 7, 15 through 20, it's no longer I, but sin that dwelleth in me, that is in my flesh. So his flesh. And our flesh, what is our flesh? Our flesh is this, our skin and bones, what we see. And that has certain desires. Those desires are given by God, right?
Yep.
Desires for food, shelter, clothing, warmth, enjoyment, entertainment. Those are all desires of the flesh. They're not necessarily evil in themselves. It's what we do with them, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, this may be way out there, but you think of alcohol. People say, oh, alcohol is evil. Is it?
Is it now?
Yeah, that's a good question. Alcohol is an inanimate object. If you have a bottle of liquor, if we had it sitting right here, what would happen?
It would sit right there.
Right. Now, a lot of people might judge us for having that here, but the illustration is...
I doubt it. Not around here anyway.
It's... That bottle is not going to do anything. It's not going to push itself out of the bottle and force it down our throats. We have to do something with it. So out of our own fleshly desires, we will partake of that substance.
We make a choice.
We make a choice. And when we know within ourselves, we know to do right. Where's that verse? It just came to me. To know to do right, but to do wrong is a sin to him. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we know in Romans 2, is it Romans 1:18, it talks about those who hold the truth in unrighteousness. Well, you have to have knowledge of truth. You have to have the mental capacity to understand that. And once you do, then you choose to ignore the truth and choose your own way. Just like Adam and Eve, you become a sinner.
There we go.
There we go. You're a sinner by choice. You don't have a nature that wants to sin. You have a flesh that has certain desires. Think of like a kid, a 2-year-old in the store. We've seen this example. You got 2 kinds of kids. You got the one that has been trained by his parents, and you have the one who hasn't been trained, right?
I would say they've both been trained.
Well, yeah, that's a good point.
One may be trained to control his will.
Yes.
And the other one trained that he doesn't have to.
Right. And that's one of the points as good parents, we are to train our children to deny themselves and to have self-control and self-discipline, right? Because we know that if we don't, what's the proverb? A child
left to himself is a shame to his daddy.
His mother too.
I know.
But yeah, we see those kids in the store.
Why does that fall on us?
Self-indulgent, snotty little brats, and nobody wants to be around them.
Well, that's why we weren't going to have any children.
Right. Yeah.
Because we saw that and we're like, no, thank you.
Right. Now,
five kids later.
Yeah. 5. But we see that we're like, that's disgusting. We don't like that. But when we see somebody who's well-mannered, well-disciplined, it's like, oh yeah, that I want to be around that.
Yeah.
Right. That's our job as parents. Now, when it comes to our life, at one point, every single person that has ever lived except for Jesus Christ, has given in to their fleshly desires in some way or another.
Does that make them a sinful sinner?
It makes them a sinner.
Can we just change that nature word and just say
sinner?
You're just a sinner.
You're just, yeah. Why not just call that? Just say you're a sinner, not you have a sinful nature. Because if you say you have a sinful nature, that's kind of like separating yourself from who you are. It's not my fault. It's my nature. I can't do anything about it.
I was just in the flesh.
Yeah, I was in the flesh. I'm sorry about that. It's just my...
And I had to slap you.
Yeah, that's right.
Or wait. Was that just written in the book? The book of my life, and right, that was supposed to happen?
Yeah, there again, then it gets into, well, it was preordained.
I was supposed to do that.
Oh, I don't see that on the board anywhere. That's not there.
Oh, that in the script. That was from God.
Yeah. So this whole concept of a sinful nature, and that it's damning to people in the sense that it gives you an out. Say, well, I can't help it. What do you want me to do? It's just my nature.
I know, and I know we kind of joke about it, but honestly, I feel like it's a trap, the teaching, the whole doctrine, the whole teaching. It's a trap, maybe a cop-out.
Well, and that also, you try to spiritualize something that doesn't need to be spiritualized. It's just plain and simple. It's straightforward.
It's a bad doctrine.
It is. I think, and study the scripture, find out.
It's an unbiblical doctrine, but somehow it's all twisted up that it makes sense in their minds.
Exactly.
I mean, I have dear friends that just have this all figured out, and it is absolutely, you're not going to talk them out of it. It doesn't matter how many scriptures you give them to show.
Yeah.
I mean, I just go back to God is not willing that any should perish. To me, I feel like, and I know that we weren't necessarily talking about Calvinism today, but I just feel like
it goes hand in hand.
Yeah, it sort of does. But anyway, I just feel like that answers it. He's not willing that any should perish. So how did he go ahead and condemn people to hell at the day of their birth, or even before the day of their birth, if he's not willing that any should perish? I know they have an answer for that. And sadly, it is.
Yeah, the truth is he's not willing, but he wasn't willing, I don't think, that Adam and Eve would sin, but he had to let them make that choice. Because otherwise, we just become robots.
And if he had all that written out like that,
why would he do it? And
why would he say not to eat when he knows they're going to eat, and then
condemn them for something they had no choice to do?
It all falls apart.
Yeah, it doesn't. This is what happens. You try to spiritualize things in the Bible that don't need to be, and you try to not rationalize them. Yeah, I guess in a sense you try to rationalize them, and with your bad theology, and you're like, see, well, now they didn't die; they died spiritually. What does that mean? You get a vague definition of it means, well, to be separated from God. Well, okay, what does that mean? What do you mean separated from God? Well, separated spiritually, because now God doesn't come down and walk in the garden like he did. Yeah, but what about Adam? I mean, not Adam, Abraham. Or where he called Abraham his friend. And what about Moses, where it says in Genesis where he taught, or I'm sorry, not Genesis, Exodus, where he talked to Moses as a man talks to another man. Or what about David, where he says, David is a man after my own heart. Were they spiritually dead and were separated from God? It doesn't seem to make sense. And the other thing about this is we all look at people who are filthy sinners, and we usually, with some degree of disgust. But if you believe this doctrine of a sinful nature, why would you be surprised that people act like sinners?
Right.
That's who they are. But how about this? How about you say that person is a sinner because they chose to be a sinner? You're a sinner because you chose to sin. You chose to follow after your own lust and after your own fleshly desires. And you need someone to die in your place to pay your penalty, just like all of us. And that was what Jesus Christ did. He is that lamb that is mentioned in where God got the skins from. It is the picture. God placed Adam and Eve into the skins, so he placed them into it, which means they're covered by the skins, right? We are put into Jesus Christ, and we are covered by Jesus Christ, and therefore we can become the righteousness of God through Christ Jesus. His righteousness is imputed to you, to us. That is the good news of the gospel. I don't have to worry. And even if you say we have a sinful nature, well, all right. Well, what about Romans 6, where 3 times where it says that he that is in Christ is dead, the flesh is dead. If you're dead, you're no longer the servant of sin. Therefore, if you're dead, wouldn't your nature die as well? That kind of makes sense to me.
Yeah.
So true. Let's not try to spiritualize these things. Let's just take it for what it is and read the Bible and not read into it this theology. Just read it what it says, because you're not going to find sinful nature in the Bible. You're not going to find it there. It's not there. But what you will find is men choosing to follow their own path. The book of Joshua, I think it's 1:8, it says, choose ye this day whom you'll serve.
I think that sounds right.
So if they couldn't choose, and if they were sinners by nature, then how could they choose to do the right thing? Why would God ask them to do something that's beyond their ability? Why would God give the law when he knows that there's no way that you're going to be able to follow it because, well, you're just by nature a sinner? What God wants us to do is to walk in righteousness and to walk in holiness, to follow him and believe on him and trust the blood of Christ that was shed on your behalf and paid your penalty.
And make that decision.
Make
those decisions, make good decisions every day. But then why do we still sin if the flesh is dead?
Because we don't walk by faith. We walk by sight.
Or because we make a choice.
And that too. So we can see, when you read the Bible, this is the other problem, is you have to understand part of it is written from God's perspective and part of it's written from our perspective. We see things because we live in this world and we see things a certain way. And what God is asking us to do is to see things from his point of view. Mm-hmm. So when he says, you are the righteousness of Christ, well, I don't look it, I don't act like it all the time, but that it doesn't matter. I didn't say it. That's what God said. That's his perspective. Mm-hmm. And so my job is, do I believe what he said or do I believe what I see and what I feel? Mm-hmm. And that becomes the problem, is most of the time we go by what we perceive within ourselves or how we feel or how we behave or how others behave, rather than say, this is what God said. I don't understand it. I don't see it, but I'm going to believe it, just like Abraham. Mm-hmm. Because what was Abraham's name first?
Abram.
And then it was changed to Abraham, right? What does Abraham mean?
Wasn't it opposite Abraham?
No, it was Abram.
No, you're right. Then, you're right. Yeah.
And what does Abraham mean?
Father of many.
And how many kids did he have?
What did Abram mean? I have to go look that up.
I think father.
He had one.
He had one in the flesh.
First.
But there was one that God said was the promised seed, right? That was Isaac.
Yes.
He had one outside of that in the flesh. And then later, after Sarah died, he ended up having several more.
Yeah.
But there was one that God said, this is the one, the promised one I told you about. And that was, and he says, your name is going to be called now Abraham, father of a multitude. Mm-hmm. Well, if you count all the kids he had, it doesn't really equate to a multitude.
No, it doesn't. Mm.
But it was his descendants. And Paul used Abraham as an example to say, when Abraham believed God, God counted that belief as righteousness. So when we believe God, we become righteous, because not within ourselves, but because we believe what God said. And we take it for face value for what it says. Not by what we feel, not by what we see, any of that. It's just, this is what God said. I'm going to believe what he said despite what I see or what I feel. Yeah. And that's it. That is it.
So what do you encourage the listeners to take from this?
I would take from this, one, read your Bible and believe what it says the way it says it.
Well, and I know we could get into the whole King James Version.
Well, yeah, that's another issue.
There are a lot of versions that are...
Go back to episode 1.
Perversions, maybe?
Yeah, well, maybe. Now you're going to step on some toes.
That might have to be another episode. But it's true. It's true that things are watered down and messed up in a lot of versions. So if someone doesn't know the truth of that, maybe research that also. Yeah.
But look at this. Look at the garden. Because if you look at Genesis chapter 3, that is a picture of the gospel right there. The law was given. The law was violated. The judgment was coming. But somebody else paid the price. And the guilty were allowed to go free.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's it.
That's a beautiful message if you'll receive it.
Yep. That's it. And it's all, we just take it by faith.
Yeah.
So, okay. Well, that concludes that lesson. Now let's move on to the personal segment. Let's get personal. We already said it's cold here.
It's cold outside, baby. It's cold outside.
But was it last weekend? No, 2 weekends ago. Not this, because this is, I don't know what day it is. But anyway.
It's January 16th.
On January
2024.
5th,
January 5th.
we went to a couchon delay.
January 5th was a Friday.
Oh, yeah. There was a day of fellowship Friday. That's right. Yeah.
The day of fellowship.
Over in Longville or
Yep.
somewhere around there. Longville,
Sweet
Louisiana.
friend Elizabeth puts on at the little community center there. And
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Good old time every year.
These things are like shindig, family camp, but just on a smaller scale and a shorter duration.
Yeah, just a quick weekend getaway.
Yeah. But it's great to see friends and people we haven't seen.
Yeah.
Get to see a lot and talk to them.
Yeah, they pack a lot into those couple days.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Because they do.
And the pig roast. I don't know if we'll mention the family, but they do it every year. They try to do it somewhere around the first of the year.
I think we've already mentioned them a lot. I don't think they care because it's open.
Oh, that's true.
They just have a heart, to have people in, and especially for them to be around other Christians if they're not Christian.
Yeah.
To have that kind of
I do wish we
and-
could have stayed for the church service this year, but
Yeah.
we rode with somebody else, and since they were driving, we had to come back. But
Yeah.
and they were coming back because their daughter was in town, and
they are our friends too, the
Well,
people
right,
who were
yeah.
in town, so we wanted to see them before they had to fly out.
yeah. So it was a quick trip in
Very
for
quick
them.
for them, yeah.
But we do miss the church service this
Yeah.
year, but
Yeah.
it was great weekend. Got to try some things. Somebody
Yeah.
brought in an alligator.
An alligator.
They cooked on the grill. That was pretty good.
Oysters too, I saw
Yeah,
over
the
there.
oysters were good.
Wow. Which is kind of funny for January, isn't it?
No, it's typical.
That's common. Okay. I guess in Florida, I'm just thinking we could get them all the time, but now that we're here. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
They had certain seasons. You want to eat oysters during the cold months.
Oh, got you. Oh, because of bacteria?
Yeah.
Oh.
So, yeah.
I learned something. I'm not an oyster
Yeah.
eater, so you would think from Florida I would have known that.
But yeah, it was a lot of fun though. A lot of fun. It was
It was. We really appreciate all their efforts.
somebody had the idea to shoot 20 pounds of tannerite.
Oh my goodness, that's right.
That was awesome.
Wow.
That was
Yeah, kind of house rattling. I stayed in the house.
Yeah.
But it was like how far away?
It was
a
probably
good ways away.
200 to 300 yards away, and it still rattled
Didn't
the
they do
windows.
20 pounds?
20 pounds.
Okay. Yeah. We need to put like a caution on this thing or something
Why is that?
about tannerite because it's really dangerous. And I don't know if
people
everybody
know about
knows that.
It's a lot
Probably
of fun.
not.
though.
Some people know that. If kids get a hold of it or something.
Well, I
y'all be
mean-
careful with tannerite.
It's
It's
I thought it was
explosive.
I thought it was pretty cool.
It was amazing.
Awesome. Yeah, it was.
It was better than some of the Mythbusters explosions we've seen.
For sure. Well, yeah, I was talking to somebody, and he was behind me, and he said, "Well, how loud is this going to be?" And I turned around and say, "Louder than a rifle." And
it
as
was
soon as I did, it was.
Oh, that's funny.
I mean, and it took. We saw it, and it took like maybe a second for the sound and the
Yeah.
shockwave to reach us.
Yeah.
And we could feel it.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, about that loud.
About that loud. Yeah.
It was-
Well, in the house, I started looking because I thought for sure the windows had cracked.
Yeah.
And these people just finished building this house.
Yeah. Oh, that would have been.
That would have been really sad. But I think they had it all thought out. They're very careful, even though they were doing skeet shooting out there too. They're just very, very careful and cautious with all that.
But it was a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
It was
And
fun. Yeah. And lots of babies were there. So that was really sweet. Speaking of babies, I think we announced it. Go ahead.
What?
Let's say it. She has till Thursday to tell everybody else.
Do you want to do that?
Our other daughter is pregnant too.
Now it's you, not me, that said
Only
it.
2 daughters. We only have 2 daughters out of our 5 kids. And
Both of them are expecting.
Yep, Amanda announced hers when they were here
Christmas.
for the, what did Brand call it? The late
December holiday.
I love that.
That's awesome.
The late December holiday.
Yeah.
They were here for that. And they announced that they're expecting, making us grandparents.
Alrighty. Anything else?
I'm sure there's more stuff, but that's probably our time.
Alrighty. We'll see you on the next episode.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for joining us.